warm welcome to fellow film enthusiasts and budding filmmakers. Welcome to the 17th edition of the Mumbai International Film Festival 2022. Before beginning, I would like to ask our MIF coordinator, Mr. A.K. Maharaja sir, to felicitate Regina Pessoa ma'am and her husband, A.B. Faisal sir. And I would also request Dhwani Desai ma'am to join them. In today's masterclass, we will be discussing the creative process where Regina Pessoa ma'am will be telling the backstage of the conceptions in her films and also tell the ideologies and techniques that go behind it. And she's hoping that the information that she's going to share with us will help develop the knowledge of the students and the audience members present here. Before that, I would like to invite Dhwani Desai ma'am, who's an internationally acclaimed animation filmmaker and a curator who has carefully curated this event, and she'll be taking over from now. Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome to this edition of MIF. I'll like to invite Regina Pessoa to join me on the dais. Yes. Well, as every MIF, I've been curating a lot of animation packages and master classes and retrospectives. This time, we have a very acclaimed and renowned animation filmmaker from Portugal. The best quote that would describe her and her work is, it reminds me of an eminent poet from America. His name is Robert Frost. His poem, the first line is, "Two roads diverged in wood, and I took the one less traveled, and that has made all the difference." Well, she has traveled on a roadless path. She has made her own path, her own techniques, her own style, and that is synonymous with her name. The first time I saw her films, I was absolutely hypnotized. This was many, many years ago. The main reason was that it was like an experience. Regina, I actually felt that I was in the frame, in your film, quietly sitting in a corner and observing things and silently experiencing it. See, we come across many animation films. I've been in the field since more than 30 years now. And I've seen several of films of veterans also, and many styles from different countries. But what has touched me, especially about Regina, is that as a viewer, we start experiencing something which she is trying to tell us. We are experiencing it. So this is her unique way of expressing. I'll briefly talk about her. She studied painting in the University of Porto. In 1999, she directed her first film called The Night, where she used an absolutely different technique of engraving on the plaster plates. Tragic Story with Happy Ending was in 2005. Kali, the Little Vampire in 2012. Uncle Thomas, Accounting the Days in 2019. These are her notable films. Well, she has won more than 150 international awards globally, and practically all her films have won in the most prominent international film festivals of the world, being NSC, Hiroshima, Chicago, SICAF, and many, many more. In 2016, she joined as a senior lecturer at the Film Academy in Germany. Her two films, that is A Tragic Story and Uncle Thomas, have been shortlisted for the Oscars. It's very rare that a filmmaker, an animation filmmaker's two films are shortlisted within the 10 short films, 10 best films of the year. So this is a remarkable achievement. And of course, the list goes on and on and on. But now I'd like to invite her to talk more about her the class which she's taken on the creative process. And the first question I would like to ask you is, how did you decide to get into animation? And what inspired you? You start with your journey.
Well, I will show this through my presentation. First of all, I would like to thank you all for being here. Thank you, Dvani, for inviting me and the festival. It's a long journey from Portugal, and you make the effort to bring me here. I'm really appreciate it. How I arrived to animation. It's important for me to have Abi here. He is my husband, but he's also my producer, and he is the responsible why I start working in animation. And I will explain that with pictures during the first chapter of my presentation. But it's nice that the responsible person is here. Okay. If you could dim the lights and just leave to have a better contrast for the image projected, please. If you could just let this light or two. Better. Maybe this light, because we are here, maybe this light could be lit up and that one shut up. Perfect, much better. Anyway, let's start. My presentation is mostly, I will talk a lot about, you will show a lot of questions. My presentation is a lot about questions and how to find solutions to those questions. My work, for the reasons I will explain, became very personal. So I have to explain who I am and from where I come from. So I'm Regina Pessoa, and I grew up in that village in Portugal. This is the view from my rooms when I was a kid. And I grew up with no television, so no education in moving image. The first film I watched, I was 4 years old, and it was this one, The Gold Rush from Chaplin, a black and white film. And this film really impressed me for the rest of my entire life. Especially this scene while he was eating the boots. He was eating with such relish, with such pleasure, that me and my sister, we were almost salivating, and we whispered to each other, "It must be chocolate." So this was the first film that put a mark on me. How did I pass the time if I had no television? Well, I read a lot and I draw. I used to draw with my uncle. He was a bachelor, so he had time for the kids. But the way I started drawing it was in a very special way. It was that way that we see with those big heads. These are drawings from my uncle, very naive drawings, but the way we draw was really special because it was not on paper. It was on the walls of his house with charcoal from the fireplace, also black and white, and with a lot of texture and organic expression. So this teach me several lessons. One is that there are no limits for creativity. We don't have materials, we don't have the official materials like nice paper and pencils. There are solutions. Look, there are walls, there are floors, there are charcoal from the fireplace. And this was a very interesting lesson. Another one, it was the freedom. Because I knew that in the other houses from my little friends, it was not allowed to draw on the walls. But my uncle, surprisingly, he allowed us, encouraged us to draw on the wall. So that freedom also count a lot for my beginning. It was an important lesson. So this is my childhood. And I grew up, and when I was 17, I moved to beautiful city of Porto that you see here to finish my high school and prepare for university. And that drawing I made still in high school, the black and white. Again, black and white. Somehow my personal style was starting to get defined. And after I went to university, I never studied cinema or animation. I studied painting in art school. And in the middle of my studies, art painting is an expensive course, and I needed a part-time to help me to pay my studies. And someone told me about a small studio in the neighborhood of the art school that was engaging young people to work in animation. I didn't knew anything about animation. For me, animation, it was the common notion that everybody has. It's for kids, it's cartoons. So when I went to this studio, it was Abby's studio, I was very surprised to find out the other side of animation, the artistic art, the interesting part of animation. So I show you a little bit of the first film I worked where I learned animation. It was Nabi's film. Just a moment. Okay, it was in this film. Is one of Abby's films. It was very important at that time. Again, black and white, and with a lot of organic texture. So Abby, there was no animation school in Portugal at that time. And the way young people like me were learning how to animate, it was immediately starting working in professional projects, like me in this film. And well, I learned. Abi is very patient and he teaches. But after he finished his film and we work in some other of his films, at that time in Portugal, the Portuguese Film Commission started giving funds for animation. And Abi said to the young people, you should think about making your own project because there are these funds, it's worthwhile to profit them. And how exciting the possibility to make a film. Everybody was excited and I start trying to make a story, but the more I tried, the less good it was. So I show you Abby because he's back to you. You don't see him, but he's here. And then I trying to make my first script, my first story for a film. It was really a big deal. And the more I tried to follow the notions I had about script writing, the more I was blocked. And then Abby said, no, stop, stop, don't think about it. Just think about something that is important for you, something that marked you or that gives you strong images in your head, because if the subject is strong for you, you will use that in your images, and somehow the image will show it, and the people will see those images, will feel that strength. And what he said really marked my life. Answering to your question, how I came to animation.
Yeah. I'd like to ask you another question is that in India, there is a misconception among some people that you have to be a trained artist to be an animator, or to be or learn animation formally, to have formal training. Whereas in your case, and I've seen in a lot of people who are celebrated animators, they need not have had formal training in animation, but are veterans. So what do you think, what is more important? And how do you look at animation as a field? And
it's
how
a very
difficult it is?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very interesting question, because at the beginning, when I start working on animation, I felt a bit insecure, because compared to the people that had already some experience, I felt, or that had studied animation, I was not a good animator. So I felt insecure and, oh, I'm not good. But with time, I think that having different backgrounds, like I studied art, and I think it was much more important for my career that I had studied art, that if I had studied only animation, because art, it helped me to combine all the disciplines that are involved in the film. The history of art is important to study the composition, the balance, the taste, cultivate the taste. We have to read a lot, we have to study a lot when we are in art school, and all this information was very useful for me. And I'm glad today that I study art and not animation.
Yes, yes. Yeah, because this is, people really debate about it. And even in India, our father of animation of India, Padma Shri Ram Mohan, with whom I had the chance of taking his guidance, and he was my mentor also. He was not formally trained in art or animation. He was a self-taught animator. So, like you, so you were also you are a self-taught animator. And another thing which something comes to my mind is when you started working with Abby, your husband, you worked on the two films which will be showing in your retrospective, that is The Outlaws and Stowaway.
Yeah.
Tell us something more about it, your experiences and how you...
The little extract I showed, it was important for me to know, as I briefly referred before, the other side of animation, the animation that nobody knows, the artistic side of animation that is not for kids, it's for audience, adults, kids, whatever, who is interested in watching it. So these films were my training. It was my school, not only in animation but in cinema, how to deal with a team, and of course the artistic side of the films was very important to me. and marked the way I made films after that, how I developed my own films. Can I go through? Well, so the question was how to start an idea, and this image shows it, how Abby helped me. So, having that notion that he told me, think about something that is important for you, I thought, when I was little, I was afraid of the dark. So my first film became The Night. A noite means the night in Portuguese. And it was about a little girl that was being afraid of the dark. It's a very simple story. I was, approaching cinema and animation carefully because I didn't know anything about it. So I thought, I was humble. Like, it's a very common subject. Everybody had this experience. I don't pretend to be original. So maybe I can do something discreet in this with this subject. But then I learned something very interesting, that even if the subject is very humble and not important, like being afraid of the dark, it's very common. So everybody can recognize himself with the film. It's easy to connect someone through in India, in Japan, wherever I show the film, because this simple subject is very human, and everybody can put himself in this place. But the images I create, they are my own. Only me was in that room. Only me saw the dark through that angle. And this makes it personal as well. And this balance between personal and universal, I think, became the strength of my films. So my first film, it's called The Night. But of course, I didn't know anything about animation or cinema, so I show you a bit of the process. This is the beginning of the film, and as I said, very based in my personal experience. So I show you the room, the view and the room from when I was a kid. And another factor that played in my film, I had a strange mother. My mother had illness. She had schizophrenia. So she was, when I was little, before I could understand the process, she was very strange to me. She frightened me, and she was very religious, all these images. So this character also played in my story. It's like she was also part of the dark. And with these elements, I start building something. This is my first notes, and I like to show this because they are very rough and ugly. Nobody understands that scribbles. And now I feel at ease to show it because the film is done. I like the film. Otherwise, I could not show this. But I think now it's important to show it because at the beginning, well, when I started, I thought, well, I admired a director or an artist, and I imagined that he was a genius. His ideas and drawings, of course, they will, when he makes it, they are already perfect. Then I understand that it's not. Our first ugly scribbles, they are ugly. They are not perfect, but they are important because what I wrote here and draw here became very important to the evolution of the script and the film. At that time, I started scribbling, drawing the characters involved, and I thought even to make the film in puppets. That's why we have some schemes for puppets, so using stop motion. So the character of the mother and the kid. And then I start sketching with this pencil, and I like the color of this pencil. So I started the storyboard with this pencil, and I like it more and more. And I made the storyboard like that. And the more I advanced, the more I was enjoying. So I dropped the idea of making a film with puppets in stop motion, and I said, no, I want to use a technique that could respect this color, this texture, and this visual. But how? Then another important step. We learn a lot from other artists. And those images that I showed in the storyboard, that I draw, reminded me a lot the films from Piotr Dumala, which is a more senior Polish director, and I enjoy very much his films. So this image is not from me, it's from one of his films, just to show how similar they were. And I knew that he worked on plaster plates, engraving on plaster plates, but I didn't knew at all how was the process. So I start my own experiences. I didn't know, but I start my own experiences trying to make plates and trying inks, and I made that first attempt. So I was encouraged because I was able to reproduce a nice image. And then we decided to make the film like this. So, just a moment. It was necessary to be a builder, so I would make a frame, a wooden frame. I would place it on glass, and I would pour the liquid plaster inside this frame, let it dry, make a texture with glass paper, and then cover it with the black ink, dark ink, that color. And for the film, I would have just first sketch. I would, transfer it to the plate, but the film was made like this. For those who are not familiar to animation, this is what we call the straightforward technique. We have a camera, the image we are working on, and we make the animation directly, which means I have a drawing, I take 2 pictures, and on that drawing I make the change for the evolution of the movement. So I have to destroy part of the drawing and rebuild it again.
That is frame by frame.
Yes.
Hand-drawn animation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
On the plastering.
yes.
So it's engraving on the plasters.
Yeah.
That's a very laborious procedure. And what if there is something wrong which goes? You'll have to start all over again,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So how many days does it take to make a film like this?
Not days, years.
Years, yes.
Well, at that time, I was still studying and working at the studio at the same time, so it was not full-time job, but still it took me 3 years.
Oh, I see. Which
Yes.
means the film, The Night, which you showed right now, it took you
Yes.
3 years to
Yes.
make the film.
And now I show you a little bit of the film, okay? Just a moment.
A lua nasceu e desceu lá do além, hino de paz e amor. Anjo meu, faz porque velo por ti, só aos anjos a lua sorri.
So this is your first film, right? Independently.
Yes.
Amazing. So nearly 22, 23 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. And this song, it's my mom who sings it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
lovely, lovely.
Yes.
Uh, Another thing I would like to ask you is that now seeing and understanding your technique, it feels that to be an animator, you can't be lazy. Because you have so many layers, you are working on so many styles, you are working with a style uh, for the entire sequence with one technique, then you are applying something else again throughout for the sequence, then the third something else like painting and engraving and all that. And what about the camera work? Because that's fascinating, you know. How do you do that?
Well, in this film, I had also to do the camera work, and in animation, you saw a lot of spinnings. It was all camera work,
Camera work.
and it was teach me how to calculate, because it has to be image by image, frame by frame.
Frame
So
by frame.
and well, the what we call rostrum camera. It has devices for us to image by image turn or slide the image we are working it, but you have to calculate in advance how much we have to turn, and so
Oh, I see.
it was a nightmare. I'm glad that 35 millimeter camera is finished.
So now you can do that using the digital technique also.
For stop motion, for instance, we use a lot of stop motions, and you use digital software called drag and frame. It's much easier.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So let's talk about your tragic story.
Okay.
And, yeah.
So that film encouraged me to keep working, and the next film I made is Tragic Story with Happy Ending. Again, how this story came to my head? Well, actually, it came like this, with this ugly scribble. And it came like this because the first sentence that became the first sentence of the voiceover in the film popped up in my head, and I liked that sentence, and which were, once upon a time there was a little girl which heart beat faster than other people's. And I was surprised by that sentence that popped up in my head, and I quickly doodled something to not forget about it. And at that time it was not planned to be a film. As I said, I was still studying and working in the studio at the same time. So I used that to develop my work at school. And I developed a series of print screens and silk print, well, silk print, I think that is the name, and engravings, but for my art school. And each image I made, another sentence came into my head, and this sentence bring another image. And in the end, I had a series of images and a story. And then I finished the previous film, and David told me, why don't you use that story that you just finished in art school and adapt it to a film? So I started doing it. And again, the ugly doodlings, but important. It's like schematic writing. And you don't understand, but the film is already all there. But of course, then I had to make a proper storyboard, because we have to apply for funding and try to convince the people in commissions that our idea is good. So this was an extract of my storyboard. And then I start a step, a very important step in every film, either animation or live action or documentary, is research. So start researching scenes for the character and how I would like the final visual. Another situation, the sketch and how I wanted the final visual. But I had a problem, which was, again, those styles that I showed. I made them in a very stiff material, similar to plaster, so very hard. And I didn't want to repeat again the same experience of working on plaster plates, engraving on plaster plates, because it obliged me to work all alone in a dark room for 3 years. So it was too long.
That's amazing.
I didn't want to repeat that, so I wanted to develop a technique that I could share with the team. So I knew that I could not use that stiff material that I made the attempts for the final visual. But what to do? So I tried to find other materials, tried to change a bit the visual, but I was not happy. I wanted that sketchy, that etchy visual. And one day, I was placing a poster in the studio, and I enjoyed very much the touch of that paper, a poster, very flexible. And I said, maybe if I put some dark ink on this paper, I can scratch. And I tried, and it worked. So I tried on the back of the poster, and I could obtain the edgy, the engraving style I was looking for my film. But then there was another problem. How to do this move? It works in a still image, but how to make it move? I have to find a solution. So I imagined in my mind, maybe if I do traditional animation. At that time, we did animation on paper, the sketches. If I do this animation on paper, and then I make photocopies of this animation on this poster paper, then I have the line. And if I cover with dark ink, I can sketch. But I have to test it. So I made a short loop of the character, and I cut that poster in pieces, photocopy, and cover with ink, and it worked. So we can still see the borders of the cutted poster. And of course, for the film, I didn't use the back of the posters. We found what paper was that, and we bought a big amount of that paper, and I made the film like this. This film was the first co-production I had with France and Canada, and I could share my work with the team. And this was my team in France. Here, for the people that are not familiar to animation, we have to develop the movement. We have to imagine everything from scratch. So first we do these more sketchy drawings, the rough animation, and after we try to clean it because I need to photocopy those drawings on the poster paper, and I need to have a clear line. These were my materials, very simple. And here I just show you for you to understand the steps of so animation, photocopy, cover with ink, start engraving. We can see in the hair of the girl, and this would be the final drawing. The evolution of a scene on the different stages of the production. What we call the key drawings, the line already with all what we call the in-betweens, but not the final work and the final work. But the advantage of working with a team and on this technique, it was this time I didn't have to have the background, the character, and all the elements in the same sheet of paper. I could have them in separated, what we call layers. And for the first time, I used the software and the computer to scan the drawings and compose them with the help of a software. And this is an extract.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl whose heart beat faster than other people's. That disturbed them because of the noise.
Of course, I'm showing just a little bit because all the films will be screened the day after tomorrow.
A retrospective is there day after tomorrow, so all these films will be shown there. Now,
Have questions?
Yeah. Definitely, there is a question. What I would like to know is that, particularly when we saw the clip about the girl traveling on, on the road, riding the bike and passing through the narrow streets of a village. Now, it looks so much 3D to me. And the techniques what we use usually, I'm a 3D animator also. So what I would think is that it would be a 3D animation and then maybe rendered in a 2D look or then hand painted. So what is your style and how have you done it?
It was all made by hand, and it was also a point. I used my films as a learning process because, as I said, I didn't knew how to animate or about cinema. So knowing that other side of animation, the artistic side, I met wonderful artists and I saw their films. For instance, Caroline Leaf Street, and she had a lot of animated camera movements. And they are fascinating, and they also play a role in the story, a dramatic role in the film. And how does she do it? How does she do it? So I was fascinated by that. And in my film, those camera movements were also important. They also, besides aesthetically, I love them. Besides that, they also played an important role in the story, dramatic role. So I wanted to learn how to make these beautiful POVs, and that's why I planned in my storyboard a lot of them. It was to learn them.
The camera work is actually brilliant. So how did you visualize it?
We start with very rough drawings, if I found.
And it looks as if you are traveling.
Yeah.
The viewer is also traveling with you.
But you have to imagine the different steps of...
Okay.
When we are in a car, we see that house over there, and I observe that a lot, and how this house, when changes, how we pass through. So we have to imagine the road is still the same.
Yeah.
but how the objects come to
Come
you.
close.
And having said that, the different steps, then it becomes even funny.
Yes.
And I like to draw them by hand and not use computer animation because they are not perfect. We can
Yes.
see that they sometimes they are a little twisted or crooked, the movements, but that for me is very charming and plays a important role in the film. And also, as my films are based on my experiences or my memories, I think this kind of image that is not perfect is more similar to the images we have in our memories. We cannot, they are slightly vague. We cannot define them properly in the screen that we have inside. And this kind of movement, for me, it's closer to that feeling.
It's amazing because if you not using a 3D package and you are creating a 3D feeling with hand drawn, it's amazing. And also, had you used that plaster and engraving on this, or it was painted and inked and all that?
In this film,
yeah.
it was dark ink,
Ink.
And on that paper.
On that paper.
But there are already some camera movements in the night, like when the wood, it's...
Yeah, when she's climbing the stairs.
Yeah, but that was on plaster.
I see.
Let's
Yeah,
move
so
on.
you could, yeah.
So, this film, for a short film, was very successful. He got the Annecy Grand Prix. He got more than 50 awards. He was shortlisted for the Oscars. And this sounds very good, but also has a darker side because people start telling me, Regina, how are you going to do now? You cannot do better than this. It's not possible. And that sounds not so good. And of course,
Why did you say the darker side? I would
because they puts a lot of pressure
on you for the next film.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
And I felt that pressure a lot. And so that pressure made me reflect about what I was doing. And I noticed that my films were, my previous two films were both about childhood. They have a lot of things in common. Childhood, fears, different, dark. And I thought that it would be nice if I kind of made the third chapter to make peace with the childhood, to let the character that is not the same but always a child, allow this character to grow, find his place in the world, and live his life, make peace with childhood. So this was that's how I try to use that pressure in my favor. Yeah. And that's how my next film arrived. And my next film, well, somehow has a little relation with India because it's called Kali the Little Vampire. And Kali, I know, is an Indian goddess. And I don't know why, but this sentence also came into my head, Kali the Little Vampire, and sounded nice, but I had only that. And then I said, why Kali? Why? So from that sentence, I tried to build something according to my motivation that I have, that I previous talk about a third chapter about childhood fears and difference and dark to make peace with the past. So I start researching. And here I start researching about, for instance, the Indian Kali goddess, and I found out that actually she's good. She destroys to create. It's a positive energy. And then the other elements that I use in my films, like the dark is a good thing as well. Dark is a positive thing. In science, dark is the origin of all energy, is a positive thing. The moon is in the dark. It has also a lot of meaning, and with all this research, I combined these elements, this knowledge of the different elements helped me to build the structure of my film. The scribbles, the first scribbles for the characters, I wanted something more organic and fluid. And this time it had to be at least one more color than black and white. It had to have red. So the first studies and for the characters, and then I enjoyed, and I decided this would be the main character. And keeping researching, I found this style, and I enjoyed it a lot. I want the film to be like this. Another example, and another, and again the first scribbles for the storyboard, but very important, where all the ideas are already there. And of course, then we have to make a proper one to apply, convince people, and even for us, because I learned that the techniques and the visuals I use are so time-consuming that it is necessary for me to have a clear vision of the scenes I want to develop, because I cannot afford to develop scenes that I will not use. This is the first test I made for the movement, still on paper, using the same technique as before. Drawing first the draft animation, and then photocopying on paper, and scratching. But then I had a new challenge, which were my producers told me, Regina, no, this time you cannot work by hand. The softwares and computers developed a lot. You have to use digital tools. And I panicked, and I never used before to draw from scratch software. I was lost. I tried many softwares until someone told Regina, Photoshop, I think it's more suited to your style, and now just came out with a timeline, so why don't you try it? And I tried, and that little man is the first attempt to use animation using a software, but I was not happy with the expression. It was too smooth. So again, this film was a co-production with Canada, National Film Board, and France. So they told Regina, develop on hand the kind of brush prints and expressions that you need. And they built, I did that, I did this file, and they developed nice digital brushes for me that we can see here. And with those digital brushes, I made the first test, and I was very happy because I could find the mistake, the gap, when that was not controlling the expression of the the brush all the time, like when we are working by hand, because I wanted I wanted the software, the digital tools to work for me and not me for them, like submitting to their dictator. I wanted them to serve me and just be a tool, another tool like ink or paper, and not change my style. So all this research, it was how to keep my style, my signature, my print with this tool. So I was happy with the result. Again, I was working with the team, and they would have to use the software as well. So I wrote this manual for them to go straight to the because software is immense, is vast, and we can get lost very easily. So writing this manual.
Basically, this is the film where you started using digital
Yes,
more.
Yes, yes.
For inking also and for compositing also?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything. So it was useful, this manual, to guide my team. This was my team in France, in Portugal, and then the final compositing. I work often with 2 or maximum 3 persons at the time. And just for you to understand, this film was entirely digital, and these are the steps. So the sketch, the animation line, cover with the dark, but this time with a digital brush, start etching, as we can see here.
So you had the keys drawn on paper, or everything was digital?
Everything was digital.
Oh, I see. Even the keys?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. This time. So start etching. It's almost finished. Add some color, and it's missing one. And add the background. Maybe it will show up after this one. Anyway, for the first time here, I had also some POVs, complex POVs, and this time they advised me to use 3D animation. And it was not me, because I don't know how to make it. I had a 3D artist to map the elements I needed, and then I would make the skin for them. And they look like this. And here is the evolution of the same scene from storyboard through the different steps of animation, line animation and 3D animation, until the final version of the scene. This was a co-production with the National Film Board of Canada. This is my producer, and luckily I had the great Christopher Plummer for the voiceover. And a little extra.
Darkness gives form to all things and to all beings in the universe. The animals, the people, the moon, and me.
We will see the film in 2 days.
Now, I'm sure everybody in the audience would be having 2 questions, which I have in my mind. One is that why are you so much attached to black and white? This is the first film where I saw that you have some red also. In India, we just love colors. I'm sure everybody will agree with me. we have a festival of colors where we play with colors also. So what is your special attachment with black and white?
Well, as I showed through my presentation, somehow the images I had I contacted with since my childhood are quite monochromatic. Maybe that played a role in my taste.
Yeah.
But I have I'm fond of black and white images.
I see.
So
So it's like something like a flashback in your mind where you're trying to.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably it
So that
is.
there may be these images in your mind in a flashback, and they are just
I have the
coming to you.
impression that if we use too many colors, it distracts the viewer
I see.
from the main, what is important to see in the
Okay.
scene.
Okay.
And for instance, here on Kali, I used red because it played a role. It had a meaning, and on my next film, I use a bit more color.
Yes. I noticed that.
Because they also have a role. They have a meaning for me, and I need to find this meaning to use a color.
Yeah. There is a second question in my mind, and everybody must be thinking the same thing, I think. That how is it that your characters, which you have designed, are so very different? They are like aliens or vampires, or they look very different. Of course, it's a style, and with one image you can identify that this is by Regina Pessoa. But what has inspired you with such designs?
They are different, yes, but they have a common root. They are all children in different stage of growth, of upbringing. So for me, somehow they are the same, dressed differently.
I see, I see. So we can go to your next film,
So
which is also a very celebrated film. It was
yes,
selected in the Oscars. In
yes,
the
and it
list of
won
10
the
films. Yeah,
jury award in Annecy.
I see, I see.
So after all this path, I think now I can define what I need for my creative process, and I need to pass through these steps that I show here. These are important steps in my creative process. I need an idea, an intention. I need the motivation. Mostly of all, I need that motivation because animation, we work drawing by drawing, image by image, and it can be really exhausting. And so the motivation is so important to keep us move on. Like when we are so tired and why I'm doing this, because so motivation is very important. So I need to pass through these steps that some of them I will show through the process of my last film, which is Uncle Thomas Accounting for the Day. That uncle with whom I started drawing when I was a kid. And this was his house where he lived. Again, his drawings on the wall. I wanted to pay him a tribute because it was with him I started drawing, and somehow I made the career, and it's what I do now. So make a film for my uncle. It was the departure idea. I use my memories from him, but my motivation, it was that uncle. It was very dear to me. He was also a different person. He didn't have a regular job. It was not married. He didn't have kids. But he was kind. He was kind to us, the little ones. So and nobody really respected him, because in society you need to follow a certain pattern, and he was not following that pattern. So it was not, for me, truly appreciated for what he was. So I wanted to express that we don't need to make extraordinary things in life to be important to someone like it was to me. This was my motivation. So here we can see different images of my uncle, child, young man, and old man, and some drawings that I made of him when I was around 10, portraits of him. This uncle was very peculiar, as I said, and he had the obsession for numbers. As I said, he didn't have a job. He just made temporary jobs here and there. Also because he wanted to have time for his calculations. So he would fill sheets and sheets of paper with numbers, and that was very fascinating to me. And I wanted to use that in the film. I also found among his documents that I kept after he passed away, a letter, draft of a letter to a lady, and I was surprised because he was bachelor. I didn't knew that there was a lady in his history life. So I thought, oh, it would be interesting to use this as well in the film. And another document that was fascinating for me, because it's a long dissertation on the number 7. He wrote 2 pages just on the number 7. He kept also a journal, a diary, that he wrote every day. And for me, it was very moving because he view from outside, he had a very ordinary life, a very apparently empty life. But these journals show that it was not like that. In his apparently in his interesting life, he always found something interesting to say every day, and this was a very good lesson for me. And when I read his daily notes, it's very moving because it's little things from daily life. So I wanted to use that in the film as well. And of course, his naive drawings. When he finished a project of calculations, he would pack like this beautifully, and I want to use that as well. And of course, finally, his objects, because it was about a real person that existed, and objects that belong to someone bring a lot of charge and energy in themselves. I want to use them. But how to combine all this in a film? Again, another question. I didn't know how to start. So a friend of mine told me, "Oh, Regina, why don't you write a posthumous letter to your uncle? Maybe you will not use it in the film, but it will help you to list the memories and events that you would like to use." So I wrote that letter, and it really worked. The scenes came back to me, and my producer said, "Regina, you have to use parts of this letter as a narration, voiceover." So I start trying to, with these scenes that I listed, I didn't know what order they would be, but I said, "Don't worry, just draw scene by scene, and we will see how to edit them." So I start doodling on these numbers, this calculation notebook to get inspired, and I draw scene by scene what I wanted to develop, but without any knowledge how to edit these scenes, because it was about a real person, and it's very hard to make a film. It was my first really assumed biographical film. So, well, I knew the scenes, but I didn't know the structure. And then, well, another question. A friend of mine, another director, Andreas Hikadic, important German director, he proposed me a deal. He said, Regina, I will help you as a script doctor, and in return, when you finish your film, you help me in my film. Deal? So it really helped, and it was very important because I was too close emotionally to the character, to Uncle Thomas. So those scenes, he helped me to place them in a timeline, and also even to cut some that didn't fit in the timeline. And that myself, I couldn't do it alone because I was too emotionally close to the subject. So it was a great, great collaboration.
Can we see the clip? Because we may have to wind up the session also.
Huh?
There is, can we see the
You
clip?
have to find.
Yes, yes.
Oh, sorry. I'll show you briefly. I still had a lot to talk. I'm sorry if I run out of time. I don't have the clip.
Okay. That we will see for the... There is another interesting thing which Regina and her husband Abby have started is there is a unique animation museum, animation and art museum, which they both have started in Porto, in Portugal. Can you tell us something more about it?
This is our museum.
Welcome to the Casa Museu de Vilar, a small museum devoted to the wonder of moving images. A collection of interactive objects from Principal. The art of Regina Pessoa and Regina. International animation. We hope to see you around here sometime soon.
If you want to more...
Yeah, I'd like to invite Abby to talk a little more about this unique museum.
Okay, thank you.
Please.
Hello. Well, I inherited this big house, as you could see in the picture, and it's so big that I needed to have something to do with it. I didn't have money. I have a big house, but no money. And I thought, what can I do? I only know how to do animation. So during our professional life, we get a lot of our own materials, leftovers from the films, drawings, sketches, whatever. And so, well, we could have a room to display that. During our life, we met many animators from all over the world. We have exchange artwork with them. And also, to have this house, we have to share it with a Canadian couple. That's Norma Roger and Marcy Page. Both connect this with animation. He is a musician whose the films he made, the music has won 6 Oscars.
Oh, I see.
And Marcy was a producer at the National Film Board, and the film she produced won 2 other Oscars. So with them we share this museum and this international collection. And apart from that, I have been doing workshops with kids for a very, very long time. And when I started to do these workshops, I used to start with optical toys, with zoetropes, thaumatropes, and so on. And that gave me a taste, and I love pre-cinema stuff. And more I get more and more involved on that. And little by little, I start a little collection of those objects that you could see in this museum. So this led us to have this museum with these optical toys, and I made guided tours that takes me 1 hour and a half, 2 hours.
Oh,
to
I
vi-
see. So
to
that much
visit.
you have that much material
Yeah,
from all over the world,
yeah.
also from collection.
And this I made this, as I told you, guided tours. You saw that 3 small rooms, no less than 1 hour and a half to show off.
Yeah.
And lately, I'm also starting to do magic lantern shows.
I see.
Well, that's the idea of the concept of the museum. I hope if you have the chance to go to Portugal, that you pay us a visit sometime.
Definitely.
Thank you.
I'm sure the audience will love it to come to your animation museum, because it's rare that 2 very well-known, renowned animation filmmakers who have, and your other friends who have brought this museum together. And I'm sure anybody from India now who will go to Portugal will definitely visit your museum in Porto.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to ask the audience if you would like to ask any questions to Regina, or any inspiration you had from after seeing the masterclass. Anybody would like to ask any questions? Yeah? Yeah, please. Introduce yourself.
Okay, so I'm Sherlyn Francis from Nanavati College. I had the question about the animation actually. So I thought like during earlier times it was difficult to add sounds to the animation. So how did you do that? Like it was like nowadays is music. It sounds like that, the clarity of the voice and everything. So I'm not sure if you got my question. Like how did you do it?
Well, when we work, we are working in the film professionally. We have to have a production taking care of the film, and because there are many steps in the filmmaking, and one of the steps is the sound and soundtrack and sound design. And this is a very important step that we have to pay the same attention to it that we pay to the image. And there is professional people, Abby and I, we engage professional people to do this. In my case, for instance, Tragic Story and Uncle Thomas, it was Normand Roger that Abby just mentioned, the Canadian, it's one of the most renowned composers for animation. He accepts me to give indications like about the aesthetic side of the sound. But I deliver everything to him because he has the equipment, the knowledge, and the experience to put everything together. So advice, work with the sound team if you want a proper work.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Elam Khan, and actually I don't have any question. It's just that we are very inspired by a story, like working on a film, 3 years. So we all are very inspired. So that was really very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm sorry if I ran out of time and I could not finish showing Uncle Thomas.
Hello ma'am, I am Jay Gondalia. I'm studying animation at Bharat School of Arts. So I wanted to ask that while studying animation or the way we are introduced, so what should we focus on, or what kind of advices would you like to give while learning it? Because the craft is very vast and we use different kind of mediums. So is there any base to it, like something basic that we can stick on and then we can work on different mediums and everything?
Well, I had two ways to approach that question. One is, for me, the most important advice I have to give, it's the one I get, as I mentioned, from Abby, who told me what we have to say, why you want to do the film must be the main question. If it is important to you, you will find ways to do it. You will be committed until the end. So, first advice: just start animation if what you have to say is really important. About how to combine different techniques, I had this challenge on my last film that unfortunately I didn't have time to show because I was approaching that problem. I wanted to use stop motion, 2D animation, drawing on the wall, direct drawing, and I was very afraid how to combine everything in a coherent way. And I was also afraid to lose I have also developed my personal style, my language. But it's that research steps that I showed are very important. We have to try, and sometimes it's frustrating because we are not getting, we have the feeling we are getting anywhere. But normally I say we need 3 days to start a proper visual research. The first day we are it's very upsetting. We don't produce nothing good. The second day is even worse. And the third day we want to give up, but we are too ashamed to give up. So we go there and we'll say, well, okay, it's useless. But by the end of the third day, a little hint in the corner of a drawing shows us something. This is not bad. So from there we find the line and we pull it, and but it's there is not miracles. We have to work and research and insist and research and insist.
Yeah, quickly, that's the last question, please. Yeah.
So basically, the question, I don't know how to ask that question, but a lot of people, when they start into animation, they probably have a lot of ideas about creating their own stories and expressing them and all that stuff, but they end up working for a lot of big studios, and they they're probably doing the work that they really don't want to.
Well, this is interesting as well, and it was a very important lesson to me, because when I had the opportunity to make my own film, I thought it was the most important thing. It was everyone should make their own films. And when I was doing my first co-production with friends, I was working for the first time with a team, and they were amazing artists. And I asked them, why don't you make your own films? You are so good. And they said, why? We love to give to the other. So this is also important, to find good professionals that are willing to give you their skills. So not everybody, I understood that not everybody is tailored to be a director, and to have good professionals, sensitive and skilled and technically good professionals that are willing to give you their skills, it's amazing and very important in a production.
Okay, last question.
Hello, ma'am. I'm Amir Kini. I'm studying filmmaking and animation. I had watched one of Mr. Abbey's film, El Salvadores, and El Salvadores is about an historical event. And the movie has a very interesting art choice, which is very similar to what yours is, which is like a pencil drawing. And 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 that's interesting because when you have such a different art style on an historic event, it brings on symbolisms. And ma'am, that is something that we try to do in our filmmaking and our animation. But how do we come up with the ideas of symbolism? Like, do you come up with them spontaneously, or how do they happen, sir?
I'm not sure if I understood your question well, but The Outlaws, Os Salteadores, is based on a short story by a Portuguese writer. He himself based the story on events that he lived during the aftermath of the Spanish Civil War. So what you see in the film are not a true story, my story. It's a fiction based on true events. An adaptation from a short story that was already exist. Fortunately, this writer used to write in a very visual way. The way he was writing his story, I could visualize the pictures. Even if it's not the same thing, something written or something visually, I try, it gives me inspired for a lot. In another way, it's black and white as well, with slight green or red or yellow spots that you could see here or there. Again, because in Portugal, in Europe, there was the neorealism area that was also in film. It's more black and white films. So to make a report for that time, that was also hard times, refugees from a war, it couldn't be cheerful and colorful, right? So that's why I portray it in black and white. Actually, it was while I was reading the story, I started drawing on a paper with a graphite pencil, and little by little it gets that shape, and I liked the looks of it, and so, oh, it fits the story. It goes well with the timing, with that I want to portray. That's a little bit how I did it, but thank you for noticing that.
Thank you so much for answering my question.
One last question before we end the session. It's your first visit to India. And what did you think of India when you were in Portugal? Because you may be having ideas about India, you may have read about it, browsed on the net. And after coming to India, what is your impression? What are the good things you will take away with India, about India?
Well, of course, in Europe, India, we have a fascination for the exotic India, all your culture and the knowledge. You are one of the most ancient cultures in the world. Your philosophy, your wisdom, and of course, me and Abi, we were very anxious to get here and meet your culture. But what is the most interesting is I'm bringing also my culture. I'm bringing my films. I'm Portuguese, and this meeting with cultures and find what is more interesting is to find human beings like me that we have a ground to connect, even if our culture are so different and so apart. We are feelings and emotions are flowing through my work to you, and this is the most interesting thing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for a wonderful session, Regina. We are so happy that you could make it for MIF. And your films will always remain in our minds and hearts and soul, because they are exotic. I'm sure everybody here in the audience, please do come for her retrospective. It's an experience. When you watch the films, you will experience yourself what you're going through. You will connect with her as a director, as a viewer, as an artist. So I would like to invite you all for her retrospective session. I would also like to invite you all for a session tomorrow, which is on Iceland animation, at the same time, 2 o'clock to 3:30. So please be there. Thank you so much for coming. And Regina, wish you all the best. Please keep flying high and higher. You are an artist with invisible wings. You know, that's how I see it. And wish you all the best. And please do keep coming to India again and again. And have wonderful sessions. And you too, Abby. Yeah? Thank you so much, so much.